Hey Zwifters, I'm Simon Schofield and this is the Zwiftcast. Coming up on this episode, a conversation with Eric Min. This discussion took place between Eric and myself in the London offices of Zwift. What you're about to hear is pretty much the unedited version. I've taken out a few ums and ers, mostly mine. And the reason I'm going with this format is I think it gives a fantastic insight into Eric, Eric's views on Zwift, Eric's views on the community, Eric's views on the product, Eric's views on how the company is growing, maturing, and coping with the many demands placed on it, not least by us, Zwifters. So here it is, the annual Eric Min Zwiftcast interview. It's a long listen, but I think it's worth it. Welcome to the Zwiftcast to a very honoured guest, Eric Min. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Simon.
We're in the offices, the London offices of Zwift. It's a very grey winter's day. We're surrounded by screens with Zwift on, and there are 2,563 riders on right now. So I'm just going to depart from my list of questions that I had prepared for you to ask you for your prediction of what do you think the highest concurrent users we might see this indoor season on Zwift?
Earlier this week, we nearly touched 8,000 on Tuesday. Tuesday happens to be the busiest day of the week, so we normally find their peaks then. But I think we'll probably hit about 15,000.
Almost double from last year. I think we were 9,000 last year.
Well, it's about right. We're doubling every year, so that's sort of our expectation. We've made sure that the servers are going to be able to handle that load.
Well, you heard it here first, so let's see if we hit that number. It'd be very, very good if we did. Okay, well, let's start the interview proper, Eric, in the kind of time-honoured fashion, which is the Zwift scorecard. We've done this for the past 3 years, actually. In 2016, you gave Zwift 2 out of 10 in terms of potential achieved. Last year, it had gone up to 3.5. And now, if the graph was linear, would be at least 5 out of 10 by now. Where do you think we are?
Well, I think we're probably still around, 4.5. I think last year has all been about building the team. We've nearly doubled in size. That doesn't, generally speaking, that doesn't always equate to double the amount of work that comes out of the company. Hiring is tough, and just absorbing the number of people that we onboarded in the last 12 months has been a challenge, but we're investing for the years ahead of us. And so I'd say we took a little bit of a hit in terms of, our own expectations about what we could deliver, but that's because we're investing in the team.
When you say you took a bit of a hit, what's not happened that might have happened?
Well, it's just we're building new teams and adding new members of the teams, and inevitably it slows things down. And we need to do this all the while servicing our existing customers. So there have been just challenges internally. This is part of what happens when we grow. We'd rather grow slower in terms of output than to rush things out the door. The last thing I'd want to do is build something that we found wasteful. I'd rather not deliver it at all. So we've been really careful in managing what comes out of the company, whether it's in terms of marketing or product. We talk a lot about let's do fewer and bigger things than do lots of small things.
Give me an example where you think Zwift's overperformed.
I think that's a tough one, but I think it goes back to what I said earlier. We're very focused on what we know we need to do. Of course, we'd like to do those things faster, but I think we've stayed really on course in terms of what we think are the priorities for the business. And the priority is creating a stable experience and just investing in growth. With growth comes a stable business. Stable business comes, the resources that we can continue to reinvest into the business.
So for those, and I think it probably is a small number of Zwifters, but we've described them before as a kind of canaries on the coal mine on the Zwiftcast. Those who've been around a long time and are perhaps a little bit impatient with the pace of development. What do you say to those Zwifters? And I accept it's a relatively small number, but they do have quite loud voices.
I'm with them on certain things. I wish we can move faster than we have. But to say that we're not doing anything behind the scenes would be an inaccurate statement. We're definitely making investments. There's some areas that are just difficult and more challenging for us to do. I'll give you an example. We do have a relatively small game development team, the one that John runs. We are literally competing with the AAA video game companies like Electronic Arts and Amazon and Tesla and Google. All of these companies are chasing the same talent we are. So it's incredibly difficult to find the talent that we need to do all the things that we want. So we have to be very careful in the things that we do pick. And it is getting easier and easier as we become an established brand. It is definitely, we're definitely seeing more resumes. But even that team, is probably a dozen, and we wish it were, twice that size.
Let's talk a little bit about Eric, because you're very visible in the company. People know you. People ride with you. You led the Thanksgiving Day ride yesterday. So just describe a typical day in your life, Eric. And in doing that, try to give us a bit of an insight into how you balance the, I'm sure, many priorities you've got to deal with in your role as CEO.
Well, Zwift never sleeps. When I wake up, California, mostly John, is still up. Asia's already up. We have people on the ground in Asia. And then it just never sleeps. But for me, I think the priority as someone who's leading Zwift, it's really about setting the sort of the overall vision of the business, which hasn't changed since we started, which is to get more people to be more active more often. Really, that is something that we don't ever expect to change. What will change is probably the product around it to support that vision. And so my responsibility is to make sure that we have the resources to see it through. We're building a business that we hope will last decades, not just a few years. And that just requires a lot of resource capital. It requires human capital. So I need to be selling not only to investors, but to the people who eventually end up joining the company at the senior level in this case. So I'm out there selling the vision, selling the business to ensure that we can see this business through, which we think will take some time. This is not let's build a business quickly and flip it and then move on to something else. I think, if it's not obvious, many of us are very passionate about what we do. They join this business because they buy into the mission. And I would say that's true of our investors, it's true of our partners, true of the community. So, this is, for many of us, we have I think Zwift for many of us is a defining professional avenue for growth.
So that's interesting. It sounds like you spend a lot of your time finding the money, and we'll talk a little bit about money later, and finding the best people. And that suggests perhaps something about your management style. I mean, how would you describe your management style? Are you the kind of leader who puts the team together and allows them to get on with it, or do you micromanage?
No, I think what I'm probably good at is convincing people to follow me, but in the end, they're the ones who actually deliver. So it's really for them to teach me, what it takes to actually deliver on this vision. So no, I don't micromanage them. I think many of the senior members of our team in their own right could start their own businesses, but they choose to use Zwift as a platform for their own, furthering their own career growth, professional growth. because they're also passionate about the mission, and so I think it checks the boxes for many. But my management style is very much hands off, and I am just surrounded by extremely talented people who are far stronger in their respective silo of expertise.
So it is about getting the right ingredients for the correct recipe and to some extent allowing it to cook itself.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, we have business objectives, we have company objectives. And so everyone can have a fair amount of freedom in doing what they've been hired to do. But at the end of the day, we all have to meet those corporate objectives, and that is around growth. So as long as we continue to grow and at the pace that we think is reasonable, then I think everyone's doing a fine job.
I think you probably answered this question, but I'll ask it again. Do you revisit the mission as you often describe it? Do you revisit that often, or is it something that you feel is set now and it's all about execution?
It is set, and I think we'll look back 30 years from now, and that mission will still be there. It's a simple mission, and I think many things might change about the business, but that mission won't change.
And an extension of the mission or a deepening of the mission has been the introduction of running. Is it working, Eric?
Running's been around for probably over a year now, a year and a half perhaps. But we did a soft launch back in February, and it was a launch in New York City. Immediately we found out that people were struggling to find foot pods, and that's what prompted us to just hold back on the marketing and go out and solve the problem. And just coincidentally, we happened to come across Milestone as an opportunity for us to own it, and because I think of the foot pod, the Bluetooth foot pod, as the M+ dongle. It's an enabling device. So we thought, okay, if we want running to be successful, we'll probably be the largest reseller of these foot pods. We probably should own that strategically. It makes sense, and then we could offer a great product at the most affordable price. So we decided to make that transaction. We acquired the IP. We brought on the entire team, and then we spent the last few months creating the firmware, updating it so that it is responsive to Zwift. It was originally designed for outdoor running, and so we needed to do some work with the Milestone team to make it suitable for indoor running, and we've done that. The second part is actually to get receipt of these foot pods. So 20,000 foot pods arrived in California about 2 weeks ago. And so that, which coincided with the launch of our e-commerce platform for North America, we're ready now to finally launch this business in a proper way. I don't expect us for it to become a paid service for some time. I think there's a playbook that we can work with based on how we grew the cycling business, and what's missing is this community. And so our goal over this winter is let's build the largest running community, interactive running community on Zwift. So we're prepared to sell up to 50,000 of these units this winter.
So I think what you're saying is that running, you've kind of held back on running because the right foot pod wasn't available. Now it is. Therefore, it's probably too early to answer the running question. Is it working?
Well, I think we're super optimistic about the running business. We've done the homework. We've done the research. We've done the pricing. We sort of have a good idea of how to price it. So it's all there. We know what's lacking at the moment is the community, the marketing. People need to find out about Zwift Run. But we have a pretty large try audience within our community. So I think we'll tap into that community and work with them to create content. There'll be another community all around running. And then I think it will sort of grow, we hope, in the way that cycling has grown. Look, runners are social people, social animals as well. It's not just the cyclist. And so it's just a matter of time and effort of creating this community, and then having the community want to organize itself and then want to create content for their own community. But to answer your question, we think it'll be just as big as cycling as a business.
Interesting. Rowing, how far away?
Rowing is still, I'd say, a year out perhaps. And it's just a matter of priority. It's something that I know we're very interested in. It's just, there are other things which are just more important, which is cycling and running. But I know that John is already thinking very much about rowing. We've had conversations with federations. And rowing is not this massive market, but there is a very, very vibrant indoor market already, crash bees, right? So could we become the platform for this indoor rowing market? Absolutely. I mean, I'm surprised that someone doesn't own that space yet. But and as soon as we make our way into the rowing market, I can only imagine that we'll encourage innovation around rowing machines. So rowing machines just haven't, innovated in years because there hasn't been a need to. I think we're about to change that.
And I think you probably covered this in the first answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. Are you hitting the targets for subscribers? Are you happy with growth?
Targets, we have... Look, I have my own targets, and my targets are probably overly aggressive. So whatever numbers that we're chasing now is always, falls below my personal targets. But I think that we're growing at a pretty good clip. We've been doubling every year, and that's not easy to do, and that won't happen forever. But do I think we can continue to grow and have a community of millions of subscribers? Yeah, absolutely. This is exactly what, our team has signed up to. This is what our investors have signed up to. And it's just, a matter of working through all the friction points. The whole concept of fitness served in the home is not going anywhere, right? We're just at the beginning of that. And it's just a matter of working through all the friction points that's stopping people from actually choosing to subscribe to it.
You told me last year churn was 16%. To be honest, I wasn't quite sure what that meant. I think possibly it meant 16% of users quit at some point, and some of those came back. I mean, has that reduced or increased, Eric? Particularly this summer, did that see a big fall off, partly because of the price increase last November?
Yeah, no, I don't think it has anything to do with the price increase. So it's hard to describe what churn is in our business because many, not many, but some certainly will pause and come back. And so we did see a big pickup in Europe this past, last year. Germany being, the territory that's really driving the rest of Europe. And they tend to be more seasonal. They have beautiful roads in the summertime. In the wintertime, you just can't ride outside. Having said that, I think our goal is to create an experience that's relevant year round, right? And complementary. You shouldn't have to choose between indoor and outdoor riding. We should be relevant even in the dead of summer. So that's on us. That's on us, and this is why we've continued to choose to stay a monthly product rather than an annual product, because we want to earn your fees every month. And until we figure out what that is, we just won't give up. The problem with annual plans is that you can get lazy.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about annual plans because there's been a slightly curious product launched that I'm not sure many people understand about the annual plan, but we'll get to that shortly. But you didn't really answer the question there, Eric. I mean, I know the ambition is to make Zwift a year-round product, but are you seeing a big dip seasonally? And has it got worse?
No, not really. Not really. It's our business generally grows from March to from October to March, and that's our onboarding season. Makes sense, right? If you're new to indoor cycling, this is when you show up largely because of the weather, or because lack of daylight. But they don't all disappear in the summertime. Vast majority of them decide to stay, and what we're finding is that the winters are getting longer from our business perspective, and the summers are getting shorter. Right. Which is
people are staying longer.
Yeah, which is what we want. Yeah. And so it's important for us to continue to be an active platform. In the spring and into the summer. I think in the first couple of years of our business, we basically shut off marketing when we went into the summer, right? We just said, okay, we'll focus on sort of next fall, but we can't do that because there are plenty of reasons why you would still want to use Zwift in the summertime, and we just need to keep creating content and reasons for you to keep coming back. Not to entirely replace outdoor riding, just simply to complement it. Yeah.
I mean, I know there's lots and lots of ways to skin a particular cat using numbers, but let's try and keep things simple. Is Zwift profitable?
No, far from profitable. And that's by design. We are investing in this space. Could we be profitable? Yeah, absolutely. But it would be at the expense of growth. So we're investing every bit of revenue that we have back into the business, and some. We will continue to lose money for the foreseeable future, but that's okay. That's part of the strategy. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, public sources, you can go on the internet and find relatively easily that Zwift, according to the internet, has raised $44 million so far in funding. I mean, is that broadly correct? And are you raising more capital? And can you talk any kind of figures on the ambition you've got, on the amount of capital you want to raise?
Yeah, I mean, as an entrepreneur, you're always raising capital. It never stops, right? And absolutely, we will be raising more capital because we need the resources to continue to invest in the business. There's so many areas of investments that we can make, and we're just limited by capital and manpower.
And how hard is that sell? How difficult is the pitch? I mean, are you going back to the original investors? Are you seeking new investors?
You're always seeking new investors, and you hope that the existing investors participate in subsequent rounds. And that's the nature of the business. But is it hard? I mean, I think there are lots of businesses chasing capital. The good news is that there's also a lot of capital. And I think we've got something really unique to offer to investors. And I think there are plenty of investors who can get behind what we're doing. I think some may question the scale of what we think is the opportunity in terms of the total addressable market. We think it's huge. We think it's huge because at the moment we're going after a market of roughly 40 million, let's say, competitive cyclists and competitive cycling enthusiasts. But I think over time you're going to see our community grow, and there'll be different cohorts of communities. Some focus on running, other focus on rowing, and then there'll be yet another focus on just wanting to do all those things, and then that's where we kind of get into the general fitness. And there'll be another cohort that's focused on let's experience something more gamey and less what Zwift looks like today. So, like I said earlier, our mission isn't going to change, but the product will.
So say you were raising money at the moment, how much might you be looking to raise in the next round?
As much as possible. because it's always good to have those resources.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's the best answer I'm going to get on that question. Just say you did raise lots more money. Where do you see the big growth areas? Where are you prioritizing for growth?
Well, I think cycling is such a great experience, and we're finally seeing after 2 years of us telling the manufacturers, you got to build a smart bike, they're finally bringing it to market. And so we're super excited about for example, the Tax Neo bike. And I'm sure other manufacturers will come out with their own smart bikes. There'll be other brands that will come out with smart bikes. I can probably think of 6 or 7 companies coming out with smart bikes, which is super exciting.
So that suggests, sorry to interrupt, but that suggests that one of the big growth areas continues to be cycling. You still think there are enough cyclists who don't Zwift?
Yes. Cycling is such indoor cycling, indoor bike in particular, is such a great fitness machine. Anyone could ride it. I mean, at the age of 5 to the age of 100, right? So that bike can service so many different customers. And because you're pedaling, you have access, you have access to your hands, and so you can interact with the game, whether it's shifting or using the mobile app or the keyboard. It just makes the whole experience that much more engaging. And the third thing is it's just safe, right? Unlike a treadmill, treadmill can be dangerous, so you have to be careful. Rowing, again, is also safe, but you've given up your hands now, right? So cycling is just perfect. And I don't see cycling not being interesting for the foreseeable future. So,
and there's enough growth left in the market.
Oh yeah, I mean, so if you then, if you look beyond the cycling community, right, which we're squarely focused on right now, if you look beyond that, and you assume that every household is subscribing to some sort of fitness, the best machine for that home is a bike that can be shared with other members of the family. And it's a smart bike that doesn't belong in a shed or in the garage or in the basement. It belongs in the family room, right? I think it's just a question of how low can that price be so that it's accessible to the masses.
Right.
And at $2,500 or whatever, $3,000, whatever the current market price might be, is not that product.
Yeah.
Not today, but I think in the future, I think that we can create a product for a price point that everyone can afford and offer financing on top of that. Then suddenly you've got something that can really go after a much broader playing field.
So all those cyclists who see running and rowing coming along and think, oh my goodness me, they're going to neglect my great passion and first love and the birth of Zwift, that's misplaced.
Yeah, so that is seriously misplaced, because all of the infrastructure that we built for cycling, it's just an incremental investment to support it for running, an incremental investment to support it for rowing. All of those things just slide in nicely. And then there'll be a fourth experience. I don't know what that is, but we'll just use the same infrastructure.
Zwift, we've seen historically, has been strongest in the UK, the US and Australia. You've mentioned Germany already as a big growth area, but that leaves a lot of the rest of the world. How are you doing globally?
So happy to share this. North America is about 40% of our business. Europe, including the UK, is about 40%, and 20% is Asia and the Southern Hemisphere. I don't see that changing anytime soon. And so what we need to do is just invest across. Now, having said this, we only do business in English.
Yeah.
Right? So imagine if we did business in other languages like German or Japanese. So clearly, those are opportunities for us. What's also been holding us back is having an e-commerce platform. We spend a lot of resources bringing people to our website, only to find out that we actually don't sell anything that you actually need to Zwift. Right?
It has been noticed.
Yeah, it has been noticed. So finally, with the launch of our e-commerce platform, which we hired someone from Nike, who has built platforms for the last 15 years to help us create this platform that can be rolled out globally. So within the next 6 months, we'll be offering anything that you need to Zwift to, I think we'll hit probably over 90% of where our customers are today. So again, that's going to help us on the growth side, right? It's just going to make it easier. Most consumers are super lazy. I'm one of those, right? Just tell me what to buy, right? And I'll buy it, right? So we need to just take advantage of the fact that most consumers are lazy, want to be told exactly what to buy, and we're in a great position to tell you exactly what you need given your preferences, whether it's about your budget or about specific qualities of your needs, silence, right? Do you want to wheel on and wheel off? And so we're going to help you narrow down the product selection.
In this phrase that we've talked a lot about before, that reduces friction. I can see that the smart bike, particularly if prices drop, reduce friction. But if you're not tech savvy, Eric, and you're not, you don't have a huge amount of spare money to spend on getting yourself set up for Zwift, there is still quite a lot of friction around getting on Zwift. Is there anything else can be done to reduce that?
You can buy a smart trainer for under 300 quid in the UK. You can go to Halfords and buy a Tax Flow, I think that's what it's called, for £279. So is that too expensive? I'm not so sure that's too expensive. I think that's reasonable.
Well, I think the market is actually well serviced by price bands for smart trainers. But I think my point was, you still see on Zwift riders, I'm tearing my hair out, but my ANT dongle has exploded, or my avatar's spinning in circles. We've all seen those posts and felt for them because we know how frustrating it is. And that suggests to me that there still is an amount of friction around the experience. I mean, how can that be addressed?
It is. It pains me when I read in social media about someone struggling because something isn't working.
I mean, I've seen you even respond personally to those.
Yeah, no, because I feel for them, right? And I think the path that we chose, which is let's just become a platform, leveraging the hardware by the obvious platform, whether it's Apple or Samsung or PC and Mac, and then the same applies for the trainers. You do that because you can go after as many people as possible, right? But the flip side to that is now you've got to deal with all the complexities of interoperability. And so that's the path we've chosen versus a closed system, right? Where from us, you buy everything, the console, the trainer, and the app. And so we've just decided to go down the first path, which is let's just make it easier. Let's not force people to buy, more than they actually need to. And so that's the challenge. So how do we just continue to, make that experience better? There's still ways to go, and I'm not saying we're done.
So it's something you're very conscious of, and you've got people working on all
Absolutely. Like until my parents can get on Zwift by themselves, we haven't cracked that nut. Yeah. And there's a $500 Schwinn bike in our e-commerce store, which I'm going to send to my parents for Christmas. And the only thing they have to do is put their iPad on there, download, Zwift, and create the account.
The Eric parent test. Well, that'll be interesting to see how they get on. Where's the Zwift smart bike at, Eric? I mean, if such a thing exists. I mean, we know about the Deal Virtue Pro. We also know that, to hark back to the friction thing, there appears to be a little bit of friction around that partnership. I mean, they've made no secret that the relationship is, or some people at Virtue Pro have made no secret of the fact that the relationship is a little rocky there with that particular acquisition of the IP. What's happening there, Eric? What's going on?
I think they just like a little bit of drama that we like to avoid. But ultimately, we've got a license to their IP, and it's just an option.
And to simplify things for people who are not following the story in as much detail as we do, that would enable you to build, market, and sell a Zwift smart bike. Do you think that would happen?
I would say we prefer not to do that. And I've been very open with our partners, manufacturing partners, that we want them to create the products that will help our growth. And if they can't help us, then we're going to have to help ourselves.
Okay, so in some senses, this could be a bit of leverage over those people.
Well, I wouldn't call it leverage, but we're being just very honest about what we need in order to grow our business. And selling 3,000 smart bikes will only get so far.
Yeah. So in other words, get on with making an affordable smart bike, or we'll do it.
I mean, but I think we're seeing that with the smart trainers, right? It's coming down in price, right? If you look at that, there's a $900 price point now for a mid-range direct drive trainer, right? So the natural competitive forces are making the prices come down, and so we're just at the beginning of the smart bikes, which it's taking 2 years to come to market. So we need to see the market move quicker.
And to some extent, they owe that to you, don't they, really? I mean, you have revolutionised and transformed the business of these companies. I mean, should they not have kind of delivered what you wanted a bit sooner?
I think they are. And I think to be very honest, we definitely have driven this market. And I don't think there's any single manufacturer who would disagree with you. No. Just because our sheer marketing of the space, we're the ones spending all the marketing dollars to promote the space. So there's no disagreement there. So really the getting back to this smart bike idea, it's really, I'd say, I don't know, maybe a couple of years away, but we'd like for our partners to move quickly into introducing sort of the premium product, but then work your way down to something that really the mass market can afford. But a smart bike, I think the Neo bike is priced around $2,500 or.
It's too much. For most people, it's too much.
For most people, it's too much, but there are a ton of people who spend $3,000 on wheels. Yeah. So they're going after that market, which is perfectly fine, but that is not going to help meet our growth targets, and so we need that more affordable product. And we've been very frank with them, and they may never make that more affordable bike, in which case then we have to take some action on our own.
Well, that's a really interesting tactic. Very interesting to hear that. Around this time, well, very close to this time last year, actually, the price increase, I'm calling it a storm, and actually it was a bit of a storm, Eric, actually. I mean, it created a lot of, well, let's call it friction, it created a lot of noise. In retrospect, do you think you handled that as well as you could have done?
I think when you look at anything in retrospect, you could make improvements.
Yeah.
So to answer that question, yeah, I mean, I think we could have done a better job. Do I regret, increasing the prices? No, we needed to do that, and just we needed to rebase the subscription, because I think we offer that value. And as painful it might be for some, and all the noise that came out of that, some valid, some I think not valid, at the end of the day, I think the customers are voting with their wallets. And we haven't seen an impact. Yeah. Nothing noticeable. And what that allows us to do is just reinvest in the business. It goes back to us just making sure that we've got the resources to just keep this thing a sustainable business.
And I think people understand that. But I'm not going to leave the price thing alone a bit, because it is very sensitive. Bizarrely, when many Zwifters will spend many thousands of dollars on their outdoor bike and not blink. But anyway, that's where we are.
I mean, I think I spend probably that amount on coffee every day.
Exactly. I mean, it's very difficult to understand, but nonetheless, it does exist. There's something psychologically about subscription payments that gets people. I don't quite know what it is, but it's there. Yeah. Now, as part of the e-commerce store launch in America, you can buy an annual subscription for Zwift, which is the same as 12 times the monthly fee. I mean, what's going on there, Eric? Why would anybody buy?
As a gift. It's a gift. Okay. It's a gift card more than anything else.
I see. So that's what it's aimed at. Now, there have been some kind of conspiratorial voices saying, well, obviously what this means is that Zwift are going to increase prices again, and this is a hedge against it. Is that categorically not the case?
Look, I think we waited 3 years to increase the price from 10 to 15. We're not going to raise prices for a while. right? To say that we will never raise prices I'd be lying, yeah. Right? Because things do get more expensive, and I'd like to think that we'll continue to add more value, not less.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the e-commerce platform, it's been referenced already a couple of times during the conversation, but I want to just ask you about it specifically, because it looks to me as though that is a really, really significant thing to happen. I mean, the first point is the kind of number and range of trainers on sale was very surprising to me. I mean, that must have meant constructing relationships with, well, not constructing, but dealing with relationships with all those trainer manufacturers, because you are now another sales channel, and I know these things don't happen easily. I'm sure you were probably struck a hard bargain on pricing with some of them. I mean, how difficult was that to achieve?
It was actually fairly straightforward. I mean, we have those relationships already, and I'm not so sure that we're getting any special treatment. But do I think we're going to be one of the biggest channels, retail channels for all these manufacturers? Absolutely, and they know that too. So it was just it was a question of when, not if. Yeah. And the way we built our business, we chose to build out the e-commerce business now instead of perhaps day one. In hindsight, should we have done that from day one? Yeah, probably. We should have done that.
I mean, one of the purposes, as we previously discussed, is to reduce some friction and offer some options and offer some guidance and helping hands to people, to potential Zwifters. But how significant could the e-commerce side of the business be in terms of generating revenue? I mean, could that be a very, very big revenue earner for you, potentially?
Probably not, because that's the focus. I mean, the e-commerce is there, certainly not to lose money, but it's there really to smoothen the entire customer onboarding journey, right? And yes, it will be a business in its own right, but that's not the primary reason. The primary reason is just to create a better experience for the customer.
We have talked about it briefly, but let's return to it. The pace of development, Eric. I mean, I get the sense from just watching your body language that you are like many Zwifters, and you really, really, really would like things to happen faster than they do. Is that the case? I mean, it's an obvious question, and probably with a very obvious answer. I
mean, the obvious answer is that I wish we can have more quicker, But we do have constraints, and it goes back to the resources that I mentioned earlier. Those are problems that are being solved, and it's just a manpower question. And so, given the manpower, we have to be extremely careful in what we choose to do. There's a menu of 100 things we can do, and if we do one thing, it's something else we can't do. These are really difficult choices that we have to make. So it is a tough thing. I think now that we've got the team is double the size of last year. This is not the game team yet, but just across the board, we are a bigger company. We're in a position where we can hire more talent. I do expect us to produce more on a more better, higher cadence.
Okay.
I have no excuse other than it's not that the team isn't busy. They're working overdrive. It's just hard to see the output of that.
Yeah. I saw this phrase on social. It really struck home to me. I don't know whether you saw it and whether it strikes home to you when I repeat it to you now. New roads are not new features. What do you make of that? I mean, it's pretty vicious, but actually there's more than a grain of truth in it.
Yeah. No, I think there's some truth to that. I think roads are important. Absolutely. You need more roads, right? And we'll continue to invest in roads. But we also need to invest in gameplay or features. And so we're definitely going to see more of that coming down the pipe before Christmas. So there's a few pieces of work that's been in the works, that have been rumored. I think we'll see those things land before Christmas. So very excited about that. But we have we definitely have. John has organized his team so that both things should be able to move in parallel going forward. There's a lot of investment that we've made in the tools to create new worlds, which rely less and less on the developers, so the developers can continue to build out features and not get too involved with the map.
Okay. I mean, I know every listener to the podcast is begging me for you, to ask the question, what are those features and when are they coming? I'm actually not going to do that because I know I'm just, I'll probably get soon. And, soon has become a bit of a kind of comical meme on Zwift. Now, do you find, how do you react?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. We've pushed things back, and we think for good reasons, but ones that are just difficult to comprehend for the community. I think where we've failed or done a poor job is just communicating with the community about where we are, just that engagement. And I think this is because we've just been so focused on growth, and we've been busy doing that. And I think as the community gets bigger, it's not as easy to just drop into social media and just say a few things.
No, it's a slightly ad hoc approach, and actually we'll talk about the communications thing in a minute, because I do think that's important. But just going back to features requests, somebody else said something to me which is the kind of opposite view, really, which is you don't go to the movies and expect to be able to influence the ending of the film. Do you corporately get a little bit annoyed with the kind of vocality and the intensity from the Zwift community about demanding what the product looks like? Yeah. I mean, like I say, you don't go to a movie and get to influence the ending. So,
I think we do get feedback. We do listen. I mean, we do hear everyone voicing their wants. We know that. And some things we agree with, some things we don't. And it might take us a little bit longer to process it and then incorporate into the roadmap. But we definitely hear what people are asking for. And we make that conscious decision, and we probably do a bad job of communicating where we stand on that point and have a healthy conversation around. And I think this is where we, at least internally, I would like to see us have like an annual community event, right, where we can come together. I mean, I think we're big enough now where we can gather everyone together once a year and have, just talk about what's on the roadmap.
I think that will be very, very.
Yeah, we need a formal, event like that.
Like a Zwift convention or.
Exactly, where we can bring, the manufacturers, and the manufacturers can talk about the hardware and innovation they want to make and show off their products, and essentially our own show.
Back to the features thing. Yeah. I mean, again, I think you've probably answered this question, and I'm going to summarize it. You hear what people say, you agree with some of it, you don't agree with, but the stuff you do agree with, you just haven't had a chance to do.
There's some great ideas, some fantastic ideas coming out of the community that we want to do. It's and in many cases, it's not a question of when. It's not a question of if. It's a question of when can we slot that in, given everything else.
Finally, on this, because I know it must be frustrating for you to talk about, but finally on this, snap your fingers and one feature appears in game tomorrow. What would it be? Yeah,
well, look, it's the Ghost Rider that I can compete with on my PR segments for sprints. Yeah. I need a sprint partner. Yeah. I want that sprint partner to be me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ghost Rider must be one of the most long-standing, most requested features.
Yeah. So, and I think John knows that as well. John knows that. So it goes back to, look, we hear what everyone's asking for, and it's just where does that sit in the priority of things. There's so much, there's features, there's infrastructure work that no one ever sees and no one gets, and we don't get credit for. The game is, I like to think it's just rock solid. I mean, it has been rock solid for some time. and that's investment that we made. That's time and energy that kept us from adding features.
Just harking back a little bit to the way you communicate with the community. I mean, I think the idea of a Zwift convention sounds great, but it might only be annually. It's inevitably going to be geographically constraining for some people. Is there not an argument for? And I think I've made this pitch to the leadership team myself, because I was kind of asked to say a few things, and I said you need a regular, friendly dialogue through a single channel, which people know where it is, with the community. I mean, do you think that is a need, and could it be addressed?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. How to strike that balance is something that we have to figure out. I'm in the community and I'm exposing my personal profile. Not everyone at our company wants to expose their personal profile in this community, and so there is that privacy concern that we have to respect. So having said that, I think there is an opportunity, and going back to your point about having some sort of forum, I think it makes sense. The challenge is we still have to manage expectations, but at least there is a dialogue of some sort.
Okay.
So to answer your question, yes, okay. we should act on that.
And I will leave this after this, but people are super interested in the way that the product is going to develop. In 2 years' time, how different do you think Zwift might look? Not just in its visual look, but in the way that the players interact with it, and gameplay and skills-based stuff.
I think a lot of it will come down to some accessories that might become available. I think steering is something that I think will just add to the entire experience. We saw the Wahoo climb. I don't know how people feel about that, but I think that's still kind of early days. Who knows what the smart bikes might offer. But steering is sort of the obvious thing. Like, if we added steering, how would that change, the whole experience? Now, we see cyclists. I think going forward, they might change, but it's probably a different world. I don't expect that to be this world.
Okay, explain that to me.
Well, I think we can have different maps for different experiences.
Right.
Okay. So if we're still at the tip of the pyramid of potential customers, and these are cyclists or triathletes or runners, and as we go further down, it could be more Mario Kart. I think it could look completely different. Right. It'll be a different world.
Okay, so this could have been what John was referring to when he talked about small experimental maps that maybe offered something very different from the main Zwift experience.
Yeah, exactly. It could be completely different. We need to experiment. Right. For sure, we need to experiment before we make massive investments in this area.
I'm sorry, listeners. I'm just not going to ask Eric. I'm not on your behalf going to ask Eric when are we getting a velodrome, when are we getting X, when are we getting Y, because it's just a kind of pointless game, really. We can't, I think the purpose of this conversation is to get broad direction, and I think you've given that very effectively. So let's move on from that. Let's talk a bit about the competition, Eric. I mean, I think it's fair to say that the few competitors that are out there, they're not really making a lot of noise. They're not really wowing the indoor cycling world with fantastic new features. It's been pretty quiet beginning of the new season for the rivals or the competitors, however you might want to describe them. They've not had much to say, it seems to me. But there is one new competitor who's making a lot of noise and promising lots of things. And the question I want to ask you about that really is how uptight or otherwise, I know you don't normally get uptight, you're a very calm guy, but how uptight or otherwise do you get watching a competitor trying to build a business basically using the Zwift community?
Well, I'm just fascinated by it, just like everyone else, I'm curious about their product strategy, about their marketing strategy, about the content, and but as I said last year, the year before, there's a huge difference between a project and a business, and it's complicated. So we welcome competition. I think it keeps us on our toes. I love to see what they build. I love to see what the others are building, because these are things that we should be looking out for. Absolutely.
But marketing it through the Zwift community that Zwift has built.
Well, look, it's not something I would do. Let's say, like, I'm not going to go into their Facebook group and start promoting Zwift. Like, I don't think we need to do that. But it's a free world. You can do whatever you want. But it's not something that I would certainly condone within our own team.
Right. I mean, the rivals do have a mountain to climb, probably bigger than Elder Zwift. I mean, it's a huge mountain climb to mount a serious challenge to Zwift. I think that's widely acknowledged, probably even by them. But could they take chunks out of Zwift and hurt you in specific areas?
Potentially. I mean, I think we should be following this very carefully. And to think that Zwift is not interested in, racing is not correct. For us, it's always been a question of timing, and that timing is probably pretty darn close.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll ask you about this, and you can choose not to answer, and I'll understand why, because I know that there is something big coming, and you obviously don't want to. You want to keep your powder dry, and you want to make the announcement at the right time in the right place, and I fully understand that, and I think listeners would too. But is there anything you can tell us about what Zwift is planning for racing, even in the broadest terms?
Well, we're going to have a very exciting racing series coming this winter. But I think there are some bigger things on the horizon that it's just too early to say. Yeah. But super, super exciting. And there's no secret that, we've had conversations with the likes of the UCI. And I think it was back in September when they made some comment about e-racing. Those are all true. We've been speaking to the UCI for months now. And again, it's all about how do we create a sport out of on the back of the platform that we've built. So there are a lot of exciting discussions happening, and we think it's a great opportunity to make potentially create a sport that is both super affordable and accessible. I mean, I can't think of another sport that you can do from the comfort of your home and compete with a global, community. It just doesn't exist.
But to finally put this one to rest, Zwift is fully behind racing.
Absolutely. Racing is part of the DNA that comes from me and Mike McCarthy and Charlie Eisendorf and many others. It's just not what we led the business with, because that is not the core of the business. But it's still a very important part of the business. And what we want to do is just flip it now and say, like, let's make it the most affordable, most accessible sport.
Yeah. Okay, well, we know there's much, much more to come on that, so we'll leave that for the time being. Eric, BlackBerry, MySpace, Nokia, I mean, there's a long history in tech of the first movers losing the advantage and then vanishing, and either being wiped out by rivals or fading from prominence or getting something wrong. Is that a risk for Zwift, do you feel?
I don't. Well, I hope not. That's the answer. I hope not. I think we have to keep a watch of the landscape, the tech landscape. We need to understand what the consumer behavior is. I think there are plenty of examples of those who were category leaders and are still in that leading position, whether it's Amazon or Google with their particular search, or even Microsoft. I mean, these are still very, very successful businesses. So there are, plenty of examples of those. Yeah. Sure. But I think the lesson is that you have to just keep an eye on what is happening in the landscape. I mean, if you don't see big trends, then this is where you get caught out.
Yeah. just say a rival, any one of them, did become successful or did become enough of perhaps an annoyance that you felt you needed to take some action, would you consider acquiring a rival?
You know, I don't think so, because what are we really buying, right? There's very little. There's probably too much product overlap, so I don't. That doesn't keep me up at night.
Right. Finally, now we're getting to the end of this. I mean, I run this unedited, and for a good reason, really, because this is a wide-ranging conversation. You're very, very generous with your time. You answer the questions that are put to you, and this is the final section. So we're nearly there, listeners. It's a long listen, this, but I do think it's valuable to have such a unconstrained and kind of unedited interview with you. As the community and the company indeed matures, the community in particular is inevitably, as you've already referred to, splitting into cohorts or tribes. I mean, let's call them, there's the new Zwifters, experienced Zwifters, and veteran Zwifters, and they all have differing needs. Then there's triathletes, there's runners, and maybe soon rowers. There's fitness riders, workout riders, racers. I mean, you can segment up Zwifters now. I mean, some will appear in several segments, but there are quite a large number of Zwifters with differing needs. How much time do you devote to thinking how well you service each one of those segments?
Probably not enough, and we've started to organize our company internally to align with those, communities, because we do have to service them from beginning to end, and so the marketing team has already sort of created itself in silos of whether it's cycling versus tri versus running. The product is sort of going in that way as well, just by the individuals that we're hiring to run different initiatives. So yeah, absolutely. And we're trying to make sure as we hire, we have the right mix of people who bring, that domain expertise.
So you're saying, actually, interestingly, that you're beginning to structure the company almost in the way that the community divides itself up.
We have to, otherwise it's just hard to stay focused. So we're hiring someone just to focus on, okay, you're in charge of, growing the running space, right? And then someone else, I think the second step is, okay, now you're in charge of making sure that the runners stay engaged throughout the year.
Yes.
So what are all the content programs that we have to implement? So there's we are trying to align ourselves so that it is more in tune with the way the community is organizing itself.
I think we've probably covered this in the kind of communications section, but there are these different voices in the Zwift community. The loudest ones are probably the ones that have been around longest. But ironically, they're probably the smallest section of the community. I mean, what we never see, we see all the public stuff, but we never see the emails that come into you, or we never hear from the people who get on Zwift, ride for an hour, are fantastically happy, right, but you never hear from them. Right. But you do get these siren voices. Do you consider internally how much weight you attach to the views of those siren voices? And I think the reason this is an interesting question is because they can sometimes, I'm sure, be quite annoying to you, those siren voices. But actually, ironically, also they're the evangelists, they're the ambassadors, absolutely, they're the ones who help sell Zwift. Yeah. So how do you kind of balance that response?
Well, we always have to do a sense check. We have to bear in mind that the community on Facebook is just a fraction. A small fraction of the overall community, yeah, right? Most people are not on Facebook, in fact. So that we have to take that into account. Now, I love it when I hear, a highly engaged person on social media who's not even an active Zwifter. But my feeling is like, wow, that's great, because it would be way worse if someone just quietly left. So I'd rather have, all the engagement, whether it's good or bad, coming out of social media, because we need to hear that. But on balance, we do take it pretty seriously, and And we try to process that, and we try to see if this particular concern is cutting across, thousands of users, and if it is, then perhaps we should take action, quicker than later. So
it does have an effect.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah, I mean, I'm in the thick of it, right? I probably spend a couple of hours just finding out, okay, what are people saying, and what are things that someone is raising that I need to let my team know.
That's very interesting. You've just, of course, invited more.
There's noise. There's also noise, right? Yeah. But there's some real.
There's some signal too.
Yeah, there's some real, I think, valid points being.
Just finally on the community, what's your vision for the community? Are you planning new features and tools and integrations that can enhance and deepen the relationship?
I tell this to my team all the time. I said, we are literally getting in the way of our community. We are, if we empower the community with the right set of tools, they can flourish. They can help us grow. So, what are those tools that we need to give to our community? What are the things that they're asking for? And because we should think of ourselves more, in one instance as a platform, that people would like to use to organize themselves. So what are those tools? And so, yes, those are very much on our, high priority on our roadmap, because we're holding back our own growth by not unlocking our community and all, but with all the things that they want to do with their own community or sub communities. So, what tools, so they can create their own events.
It's all coming.
It is coming. It's not coming, in the next couple of months, but this is a probably a 6-month project. Okay. But it's not just even our community. It's our partners saying hey, we want to do more on your platform, but we tell them well, we've got these other things you're gonna have to get online, right? We need to just unlock all of that and get rid of all the bottleneck that we are creating for ourselves by investing in the platform and in the tool set that we'd like to give to the community.
Two final questions. Is Zwift still a startup? Whatever a startup is.
I don't think so. I certainly don't want our team to think we're a startup. We're growing, but we're definitely not. We're still young. We're definitely not a startup. With more resources, whether that's capital or people, our own expectation of what we deliver to our customers goes up. It has to.
And finally, and you're not allowed. We've discussed this. We just had a bit of lunch. We discussed it over lunch. You're not allowed to say jet lag. What keeps you awake at night, Eric?
What keeps me up at night, apart from jet lag, which is often the case, is making the wrong investment decision. We have to be really careful. If we only can do a few things. And those are big bets. These are bets where you might not see a payoff for 2 years. Right. So if you get it wrong, it's very, very painful.
And what would be an example of that? Running, for example?
Running, right? So, for example, running, right? Okay, we place a bet. We do all the research, place a bet. We spend millions of dollars trying to get this thing off the ground. It doesn't work. That's a very painful exercise. So we need to make sure that we place... That's what keeps me up at night sometimes. It's is that the right investment to make? Yeah. And I'd like to think that I'm surrounded by enough intelligent people that we're going to do this not on emotion, but based on facts and data and all the learnings that we have from the last 5 years, that the probability of success is pretty high.
There is just one more question.
Okay.
It's the traditional. It's the traditional last one. I know you. I think you Zwift daily. I think you start your day Zwifting. What's your FTP, Eric, at the moment?
Well, I don't know, and I don't want to know because I'm afraid to test myself. Here comes the excuses, right? I have been traveling quite a lot, and I did have a bad bike fall back in June.
Yeah.
and that really knocked me off for a bit. And then since then, I've been riding but not training. Two different things.
Yeah.
So my overall fitness is good, but my threshold is not something I've been focused on. And I recently broke ribs. And so I've got plenty of excuses why.
So it sounds like the answer to that question is the probably same not. As most Zwifters would give, which is not as high as I'd like it to be.
Yeah, but you know how it is, right? All the Zwifters, we all think we're faster than we really are.
Yeah.
And we all look better than we probably are just through the game.
Okay, well, you did open the doors for one very last question, so okay. I'll just go back, and I think I'm going to ask this one, actually. We've dealt with this 12-month subscription, which was, you've explained, basically a gift card. Where do you stand on an annual subscription for Zwifters? Again, this is a much requested feature.
I think we'll have to take another look at it, but our feeling is we want to earn that fee every month. And what happens with an annual fee is you can get lazy. You get lazy.
As a company,
yeah. Because you're locking customers in. Both those who are engaged and those who are not. So I think year over year, if we see that we're improving engagement during those months that they previously paused, it means that something's working. And all that could be, can potentially be hidden by.
So you're really saying a monthly fee keeps you honest?
Absolutely. I don't. There's a reason why Spotify, Netflix, they only have monthly products. They don't have annual products. And then also, it says something about the confidence of our business that we don't have to lock you in for a year, even on a discounted basis.
But I was going to say there's another way of doing it, and it sounds like we're harking on about this one particular thing, but I know it's of interest to Zwifters. How about if you just reward somebody then for paying 12 consecutive monthly fees, which have kept? I think
there's a valid point to that. I think the whole concept of rewards is something that we need to take a hard look at. And that is a better approach.
So you're looking at it?
Yeah. No, we are. We rewards is something that we need to figure out. Yeah. And it may not be monetary. It could be digital. It could be, whatever. But it's something that we need to focus on.
Okay, well, that really is it. It's well over an hour, but I do think it's a fantastic insight into the way Eric thinks and the way that Zwift works, and lots of questions that I hope listeners have enjoyed me putting to you. Just remains really, Eric, for me to thank you. You're very, very generous with your time. There have been no restrictions, I can assure listeners, on what I've been permitted to ask. The only censorship has been self-censorship, and I don't think it really is censorship. I've kind of explained why I've not asked those "when are we getting X" questions, because they're just a bit pointless, really. Well, so I just want to say thank you very much for putting no restrictions on and being very generous with your time and answering both my questions and questions that came from the community. Thanks very much, Eric. Yeah, thank you, Simon. And I can tell you that I'm super excited about having this very interview 12 months from now. It's in the diary. Thank you very much, Eric. And that's it. Where will we be in a year's time in the land of Zwift? Well, you know where to come back to find out. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. As I think was obvious during our conversation, there were no restrictions placed on me by Eric or by Zwift. There were no PR people present. It was a one-to-one conversation with Eric and myself, and there was no influence put on me to include or uninclude anything that you heard during that discussion. Thanks for listening. See you next time.